Reggie here, and I want to welcome you to another one of my videos. In this video, I'm going to take some time to respond to some questions and comments that have been sent to me. Some of these questions and comments come from videos that have been released. Some are from DMs. Some have been from live streams where people have asked the question, and honestly, I haven't fully addressed some of the questions. My goal with this is to make up maybe for me not fully responding to some of these things over the last few weeks, because I've been doing some of these bigger topics, especially during live streams, and haven't taken as much time to interact with people. And again, I want to maybe make up for that. So with that said, we are going to dig into your comments. Stay tuned. All right, so I have a ton of questions here on my phone. I have a couple that are sitting on notes in front of me, and we are going to rip into them. There was a comment from a guy named Mo Dimon. I think that's how you say it. It's a very long username, but I think it's like Mo Dim. His question was, choose a side, Transformers or G.I. Joe. I'm going to have to go with Transformers. I was a bigger fan of Transformers, even though I absolutely love G.I. Joe. I spent a crazy amount of time not just watching the Transformers TV shows, but playing with actual Transformers. I love the mechanics of Transformers, so I'm a huge Transformer fan. So great question that came in from him. This one came in from Mac Runner, and this was left on a video that was released, and his question is, what does the pre-screen mean in regards to CGC? And this was a submission video that I recently released. The pre-screen essentially means that when you send it in, you say to CGC, only grade these comics if they meet a certain threshold. If they don't meet that threshold, send that comic back to me ungraded for a small fee. But if it does meet that threshold or come in higher, go ahead and grade it. And so recently I released a couple of videos where I set a pre-screen at a 9.8 because I only want the book to be graded if it is a 9.8 or higher. And in another case, it was a 9.6 or higher. And so you can set the threshold wherever you choose to. But at least in this instance, it was 9.6 and 9.8 where I placed it. It's a great way, the pre-screen is, of making sure that you do not grade a book where the cost exceeds the value. And sometimes that thresholds can be between a 9.6 or a 9.8 depending upon the book. So hopefully that helps. Next up, Berkman asked the question. He says, newbie question. Why is it all Marvel and no DC? Is it because there are fewer DC movies? Do the movies drive comic sales so much? My local shop owner said that he doesn't know about James Gunn's plans for the DCEU because he does not need to know them. According to him, it has been a long time that a movie released, I guess in a DC movie, influenced his sales. So this was, I left on a video in which I ran down, I think, the most sold comics on the Shortbox app. So what I would say is, for whatever reason, and I think there's a lot of different reasons, Marvel tends to dominate these lists, these top 10 lists, these submission lists, the most purchased lists. Marvel books just do that. And part of it, yes, I think is related to the movies and TV shows. But even if you set that aside, I think that there is more excitement and potentially also more money to be made with Marvel comics than DC books. And I think there's a variety of reasons why that might be the case. And in this video, I'm not going to go into all those reasons, but I will encourage you, if you have an opinion as to why we always see more Marvel than DC or even independents for that matter, sound off in the comment section, because I think that the reasons are multifactorial. I don't think that it's just because of movies and TV shows, because I want to say that it's probably been this way for a very long time. But sound off in the comment section and let me know what you think. There was a question that came in from McPhee. I think that's her last name, McPhee. She says, do you suggest always cleaning and pressing? I thought that was frowned upon. I just had some graded and not cleaned and pressed. I always recommend taking your best shot on goal when submitting comics in to be graded. If you are going to spend your hard-earned money on getting books graded, you should have those books pressed. And as part of the pressing, there is always a clean. You would never press a book that is not first cleaned, right? Because it's like, drying clothes that have stains on them, right? You clean it first, then you do the cleaning process. So I would always recommend a clean and a press prior to grading because you want to take your best shot on goal. And so you could have a brand new book that still has defects. It could have wavy paper. And so I personally would be bothered by a wavy book that could get a 9.8 because wavy paper is allowed, but a wavy book in a perfectly clean square case, that would bother me. So a clean and a press in my mind is always mandatory, but it's your money. And so you should decide what's in your best interest. But I can tell you, I don't grade without pressing. That is just the way that it is. Because if you get a lower grade, you're always like, shoulda, woulda, coulda. What would have happened had I just go ahead and spend the money, get it done, and take your best shot on goal? There was a question that came in from Logan. He says, question, how close are the platforms that tell us fair prices for our comics to the Comic Street book price guide? And I think he's referring to Overstreet. So this was on a video about the accuracy of pricing services. And part of the reason why I did that video was to highlight the fact that there are sales transactions that are taking place all the time especially during the pandemic, but to this present day, that are not taking place on platforms like eBay. And a lot of the pricing services use data from eBay to determine the fair market values. And so it was almost like an FYI to us as collectors that, hey, these pricing services, which I think are mandatory, let's be clear about that. I think you have to know the prices of things to triangulate how much to pay or how much to sell something for. But with that said, they aren't 100% accurate because there's a lot of transactions that are taking place online and offline that are not captured. The second part of the reason for that video was to say to some of these pricing services, hey, you might want to think about forming some different relationships with some of these apps that are out there and some of these platforms that are actively selling large volumes of comics. Make some deals, establish some relationships, get access to that data so that ultimately your service provides better information to its customers, right? That was the two parts for this video. But getting back to the question at hand, it is impossible, in my opinion, for a print guide that is published once a year to be accurate to a pricing service that is updated daily or weekly, depending upon the platform. There are transactions that are taking place for comics literally every hour of the day. And so it would be impossible for a print guide to track the ebbs and the flow of what is happening with a comic, right? A lot can happen with the value of a comic over the course of a year. And if you're looking at a print guide as your guidepost for what a book is worth, it potentially won't be accurate. You also have to consider books are released every single week, and there are books that come out that might get hot, that might have some value beyond the cover price, and a print guide would not reflect that at all. And so that's, again, is part of the reason why I say having access to a pricing service is mandatory. You have to be aware of the caveats, but having access to a pricing service is mandatory in my mind, and you have to decide which one that is. A lot of people use eBay Solds. I'm not a huge fan of that. I prefer some of the data aggregators that show me individual transactions both on and off of eBay across CGC, CBCS, across all of the various labels, and there are videos that are here on the channel that can actually help with that. Another question that I receive from people repeatedly is, when is GarageCon? It is taking place November 11th, and I think we're going to start maybe around 10 o'clock. Garage Con is literally a con that I have here at my house in my garage, which is located right below me. And it's an opportunity for people to come together, hang out. We I think, have a good time talking about comics. I do some sales. We tend to have some food. People get to meet one another. You get to go through my collection. In some cases, you get to see some of the books that are here. And for those people that are Patreon members, they also get a private tour of the studio here. They get to come up to the studio, hang out up here for a little bit and hang out. And I will also tell you, we are probably going to be doing a couple of cool things related to Isolation and Marcus at GarageCon. In addition to that, will I be at New York Comic Con? Yes. I finally made my airline reservation today. I had a hotel, but no airline. Took care of that today. I will be on site at New York Comic Con from the 12th through the 14th. So just a couple of days. More details will be forthcoming on the where, when, and how, and all that kind of stuff. But again, I'll be joined there by the creative teams for both Marcus and Isolation. So stay tuned for more on that. A big question that has come in at least twice. Once in a live stream, somebody kept asking this question and I did not answer it. And then I also had a DM conversation with someone recently about Ethan Van Sciver. And the question is, what do I think of him? That was basically the gist of it. The truth of the matter is that I don't know a thing about Ethan Van Sciver. I'll be completely honest. I don't spend a whole lot of time watching other YouTubers' content. And from what I've seen of him, and this is all opinion, right? This is all opinion. He seems to delve more into the negative. He seems to me to be somebody that is disgruntled with the industry, and that is the lens through which he looks at a lot of stuff. The one time that I did pay attention to something that he was involved in, it was related to DC Comics. And you guys will have to correct me on this, because again, this is my perception, not having watched any of this guy's content, right? It seemed to me that he was putting it out there that DC was going to fold and was going to either be sold or basically close up shop. And that was the drumbeat that I kept hearing. And clearly that has not happened, right? So the question for me is, was this speculation, or was this someone trying to take advantage by stirring the pot to get views? I don't know the answer to that, right? There are people out there that have watched a lot more of his content and probably have a better idea of exactly what it was that he said. But that was the one thought that I have in my head, is that he said DC was going to fold and or be sold. And you would assume, because he is an insider, that he might actually know better than that, because that clearly has not happened, and it's been a couple of years since I heard that drumbeat. So the Ethan Van Sciver, that's all that I know, to be honest. That's it. That's my impression of him. Another question is, when is my next Whatnot sale? That is not something that someone asked me, but I wanted to throw it out there. The next Whatnot sale is tonight, Thursday, tonight at 8:30 on the Whatnot app. I definitely encourage you guys to check it out. This question came in from Monotone Cards. A lot of investable comics are mainly first appearance books. My question is, what is your take on first solo series of characters and origin stories of characters? Do those have legs? They do, but I think that it's limited, right? And I think you have to do a couple of things. I think you have to look at, what is the value of the first appearance, right? Because to some degree or another, a high first appearance value means that a lot of people can't necessarily buy that book. So they start to look for alternatives, right? They start to look for, where else can I get in, because I want to participate because I love this character, right? Or because I want to make money, or whatever it happens to be. They start to then look for these other niches, the second appearance, the third appearance, the first battle, right? The first solo story is a great way to go. And origin stories, again, another great way to go. But if the value of that first appearance isn't significant enough to prevent people from being able to get it, then I personally think that that results in the first solo appearance and the origin story's values being lower. If that first appearance is super expensive, then I think that first solo starts to look appealing and attractive, the same way that the second appearance might also be a great alternative for people. The cameo also becomes a great alternative because essentially people are priced out of what it is that they really want. And so you look at, for example, the first appearance of Wolverine. That is a pricey book. Hulk 181, pricey book. As a result of that, people start looking at 180 as an alternative. They start to look at also his first solo series as an alternative. Great cover, no doubt about that. It's also a great story, but I think you have to look at these things in totality. You can't make a blanket statement about any of it. The other thing I will say to you is that origin stories can be a little risky because origin stories can change, and we've actually seen origins be retcons, and so you also have to be cautious about over investing into an origin of a character. Now, if you love the character, by all means, get whatever you want. But when you start to talk about investment, I think you have to be cautious. I think from this person's questions, I think from the follow-up that I may have had with them, they also started to talk about speculation. I personally do not believe that investment and speculation are the same thing. I look at them as a spectrum. Investing in my mind is like blue chip stocks, a comic that has a track record of performance and success. The origin or the first solo story for Spider-Boy, for example, might not be an investment-worthy book. That might be a little bit more of a speculative buy. And with that, timing becomes very important, right? How quickly can you get that book? How quickly can you turn around and sell that book? Because it's going to be within a certain amount of time that you actually have the potential to make money. You also have to look at, well, what is the cost of Spider-Boy's first appearance? It's not very high. It's actually declined from around $200 to around $100 or less. And so again, now his first solo isn't all that attractive because his first appearance isn't really doing all that well. Now, if that first appearance was thousands of dollars, that first solo, that origin story might also look a little more attractive to people because they are priced out of what they really want. I've seen raw books. This is actually from E-Dub. I've seen raw books being sold for graded book prices. When you try to ask how is that to the seller, there is either no response or a crazy response. It would be good to have two price listings, one for graded books and one for raw. I think that would stop a lot of the misconceptions that you can sell raw books for graded book prices. So what I would say is, first, there are resources out there that show both graded and raw side by side. ComicsPriceGuide.com is one of those resources that shows you condition or grade, the value for the raw book and the value for the graded version as well. Then there's also pricing services that show you just the graded. What I will say is I personally don't think that, because I don't know exactly what book this person was talking about, I don't know that people are mistaken in the sense that they are confusing one for the other versus maybe they are just saying this is the price for this book. And if you want it, I don't care whether it's graded. This is how much I'm selling it for. Now, this could happen with some Amazing Spider-Man books, for example. I have seen the raw version of some low number Amazing Spider-Man books be sold for the same price as a graded version of that book. I've seen it. People can do whatever they want when they're trying to sell something, but that doesn't mean that you have to buy into that. Now, with that said, I've paid some high prices for some ASM low number books because I really wanted the book. I really needed the book. It's not, in some cases, a book that you see all that often, so I've pulled the trigger. But you have to decide how much you want to spend for some of this stuff. You have to arm yourself with pricing information, with data, to have a conversation with people to say, here's what I'm seeing. How are you valuing this? And if they don't have the ability to have the conversation, then potentially that is not a person that you want to do business with, because maybe they're trying to take advantage of you. So again, you go into these situations eyes wide open with as much information as you possibly can get. You have the conversation where you can, you make an informed decision, or you walk away from the deal. Don't catch a brick if you don't have to. So I think I'm out of questions. There was another really great comment here from Kyle, and Kyle kind of went through in the comment section to piggyback on something that I hit on before, but I'm not gonna dig into that. So I think that's pretty much it. I want to thank you guys for taking the time to watch this video. If you have questions, be certain to leave those below, and I will try to respond to those as best I can, or I'll do another video like this and just rip through as many questions as I can possibly get to. If you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, I want to encourage you to do so now. And if you want to reach out to me on Instagram, you can do that at Regie Collects. Take care.
This thing on? Mic check. I just want to make sure y'all can hear me clearly. Yeah. Should you practice art, or should art be your practice? I had a question, so I asked it. Not to anyone specifically, but to my inner God, you know? The one that's gonna be a master, the one that's more than a rapper, the one that's an educator, the one that seeks enlightenment. He travels with concepts, he's got the mindset expansive. He understands that his time combined with travel and concepts makes his mind convex. Sort of like when you look at a brain scan, straight off meditation, we was concaving until we had that eternal dialogue that created our dialect. Now we in distinct rooms of pure souls having them conversations, synergy and combinations. You fly and we waiting, Indian style in the gold.